Joe did his own television show, as did Houston. And so they would do their own thing. And Joe thought, well, hell, I can get my own booker and I can do my own thing. And I don't need Dallas anymore. He didn't like, look, nobody liked paying the booking office their 10% fee or whatever the hell it was. So you had to pay the booking office, first of all, to use their talent. Then you paid the talent. So Joe didn't like that concept and wanted to have his own. He felt that San Antonio and everything south that he was promoting should be his. And broke away. And, the first real booker that he had was Wahoo McDaniel. And man, Wahoo came in, and Wahoo, boy, he set that territory on fire. And Wahoo had a rivalry with Tully that, man, it made Tully a name.
Wow.
Because before, Tully was just, Tully Blanchard, the promoter's son.
I see.
And as great of a worker as Tully was, he was still, I think, in a lot of people's mind, viewed as the promoter's son. He was babyface. Man, turning Tully heel and working with Wahoo McDaniel, man, Wahoo made him. And Wahoo, had a rich history with so many of the top stars around the country that Wahoo was able, as booker, to bring in huge top stars into San Antonio that had never been seen before. So in addition, the Funks now are no longer, champions in the NWA. The Funks and Fritz didn't get along. So Wahoo brought the Funks in because he always had a good relationship with them. Wahoo would bring in, like a Brody from time to time, but Wahoo was building that area. He had Scott Casey locally. He made Scott a top guy. It was Chavo Guerrero Sr. came in and, made Chavo a top guy. It was Wahoo looked at the future. Wahoo was always looking for, and he was one of those guys that would give you, we're going to bring you in. This is what we're going to do with you. If it gets over, man, we may do something more. Otherwise, we'll kind of phase you out. But he was always looking for the next star. Okay, who's the next guy that I'm going to be bringing in here to make this work? And Wahoo brought San Antonio to heights it had never seen before. And in the middle of all of that, in Houston, Paul had also become disenfranchised with the Dallas booking office, felt that it had become stale, and saw what was happening with Southwest. So Paul made the call and said, hey, they want to change booking offices. And met with Wahoo and met with Blanchard. And the deal was really contingent on Wahoo, because Wahoo was the one that was really bringing it. And Wahoo, it was Wahoo's ideas. It was Wahoo's angles. It was Wahoo's talent. And one day, Wahoo and Joe, I think, got sideways, probably about Tully. And they said they're going to bring in a new booker, bringing in Dick Slater. And Wahoo had already committed to Manny Fernandez. So Manny Fernandez was coming in to work the territory. And Wahoo had all these ideas for Manny and wanted Manny to be, one of the top guys. And I was there. It was the Hemisphere Arena in San Antonio. And I was there sitting right at the table next to Wahoo when Wahoo made the announcement to the dressing room that, boys, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I think Joe's bringing in Dickie Slater. Don't know what he's got planned. I got Manny Fernandez coming in to set this place on fire. But this is my last one. I'll see you down the road. And thank you guys for everything. All right. And I'm like, holy shit. And you know, it was still a few weeks before Dick came in. So Tully took the book kind of in there for a little while. But that really pissed Paul off because Paul had made everything contingent on Wahoo as the booker and liked Wahoo. They had a good relationship. Paul made a lot of money with Wahoo. And Wahoo really had, man, set the place on fire. And so now you've got Wahoo gone, and you know, somewhere in there, even before that, you know, Joe had wanted to crown his own world champion, brought in Adrian Adonis and made him the champion. And it was just they lost direction. Slater came in, had an accident. Dick was out as booker. Dick was out of commission totally. Tully takes back over as booker. They bring in Buck Robley. Buck Robley comes in. Buck had his crew of guys from Alabama and Pensacola and that territory, the Continental Territory, in Eastern Tennessee, that came in and practically that was about as close as I think I can ever remember that it was like, holy shit, this is bad.
Wow.
Thinking that, you know, we're like, this is killing the business. It was so bad. It was Kenny Lucas and Ricky Morton on top as tag team champions. Ricky was a skinny little kid, and Ken Lucas was 100 years old and just tiny. And you know, Paul was
back then.
What's that?
And size mattered much.
Oh, more. Size mattered when you're working with like Brody's and guys that Paul's bringing in,
right?
And it just was. He was tiny compared to Gino. And Gino was a top heel, Tully, and it just didn't fit. The only big guy that he had was he would bring in Brody from time to time. He brought Duggan in at the very end, and that's where Duggan, you know, was going to cut his teeth and learn how to be a heel with Buck. And then, you know, they finally got rid of Buck. Tully took back over. And that's kind of where Paul was like, I'm done. I can't do this. And Watts called. And it was ironic because Watts called after had one of the biggest shows in the history of Houston with Gino and Tommy Rich in a cage and Bockwinkel and JYD. But that was Paul doing, you know, the work, booking JYD and Bockwinkel and all those guys from outside of the territory to come in and work Houston angles, not work San Antonio angles. And San Antonio was up and down. And then, you know, from there, we went with Watts, and Watts we did Mid-South. But then San Antonio went with a lot of different bookers. They had, at that point, Tully was booking. Then they went to Chavo Guerrero for a while. Fred Barron bought the promotion from Joe Blanchard. Fred Barron was a used car salesman, Barron Motors, and he bought the promotion from Joe Blanchard. And Chavo was the booker. And then, man, I forget who the hell it was. It might have been Bobby Jaggers, but I know Bobby Jaggers was involved in the angle that got him kicked off of USA. So they covered Scott Casey with cow manure, and USA looked at that and said, yeah, we don't want that on at noon on Sunday afternoon.
See, I had heard that it was a bloody match with Tully and Bob Sweetan. That wasn't it. It was the
cow manure.
Wow.
It was the cow manure. The blood and guts didn't help, but the turning point,
the straw that broke
USA, yes, straw broke camel's back was the one thing that USA cited was we don't want somebody being covered in cow crap on our network at noon on Sundays.
They're cool with dog food on a Monday night, but man, that's
different.
I'm just kidding. You ain't got to get defensive. Come on now.